The first step essentially is you're voting to adopt this document, which is the housing element and fair share plan, which sets forth all of the things I just talked about and is a requirement of the settlement agreement between Fair Share Housing Center and the Township of Teaneck. So that's
if we don't know, then what's the ramification?
Well, if you do that, then the court would find Teaneck is not protected. Somebody could file a builder's remedy lawsuit, and you'd be vulnerable to doing things and forced to do rezonings that you may not like.
Sure.
This may sound very simplistic, but all the developments that have been approved in the last 5-10 years are actually protecting Teaneck now from a builder's remedy lawsuit?
Many of them, and I can't say every single one, but many of them, that were either by variance or through zoning have an inclusionary element, have low and moderate income housing, precisely because Teaneck knew that it had this obligation and that at some point it would have to prepare a housing element and fair share plan to be prepared either to file it with COA or the court. So all of those projects have helped Teaneck to meet that obligation. So the answer is yes.
And if this board does not approve these, it does not report this back to the council can still vote again on March 26th.
Well, I think you're getting to the second part of it, which is the adoption of the ordinances. Right now, all that what the public hearing is about is essentially the adoption of the housing element and fair share plan. The housing element and fair share plan is one element of the master plan. So it's part of the master plan. Before COA came along, typically a community would do a housing element and fair share plan at the same time it did its master plan. But because of COA, essentially it's done on two separate tracks. So the master plan, the land use element, the circulation, all of that, that's done separately. The housing element is adopted as a separate element, but the two together essentially is the master plan for the community.
Got it. Okay, so continue.
I'm happy to answer any further questions. The board will, I assume, vote to adopt this evening. That's what I'm assuming. Obviously, we have to. This is a public hearing. We have to open it up to the public for questions and comments. But so that's the.
And that would be the next step. I'm asking you to guide us here. That would be the next step after the board finishes their questions.
Correct.
Okay, Mr. Rose.
Yes. If this is adopted, what is the formal statement that we're making? This is a supplement to the master plan?
No, this is part of your master plan. It's one element.
Is it, okay, it's one element of it, but what's the terminology used? Are we making an addendum to it? Are we making a change to it? Are we making a...
You're adopting the housing element and fair share plan for the Township of Teaneck.
So in other words, it does not quite exist at this point in time?
Well...
Or are we adapting it to include be more inclusive of information?
So not to get too complicated, but as part of the second round, Teaneck adopted a housing element and fair share plan which addressed the first two rounds. Then COA then attempted to adopt, or actually adopted third round rules, and Teaneck actually adopted amendments to the housing element and fair share plan to address those new obligations. Did so back in 2008. And it also did that, subsequently. What happened is there was a challenge to the COA rules and the court threw them out. So it invalidated everything. In 2015, at the end of the 2015, Teaneck adopted a housing element and fair share plan that basically identified the actions they had taken, but there was no settlement on the numbers. The 714 number, that had not been settled. So it was an interim step just to protect the township against builders' remedy lawsuits. Essentially what you're doing tonight is you're adopting a housing element and fair share plan that would supersede the 2015 plan, the 2008 plan, the 2003 plan. So this will be, if somebody walks into the township municipal building and asks for the master plan, they would be handed the master plan,
That inclusive.
and as well as this stuff.
Thank you.
Okay. If there's no further questions from the board, we'll open it to the public. Mr. Attorney, is there a 3-minute test?
3-minute roll call.
Anyone else like to speak, or anyone would like to speak on the adoption of the proposed housing element and fair share plan? Seeing no hands, I'll turn it back over to you.
I think all you need to do is make a motion and then take a vote.
Okay, so this is the motion, so I'd like to make a motion to adopt the proposed housing element and fair share plan for the Township of Teaneck as prepared by our planners and dated February 6, 2019.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Rose?
Yes.
Captain Conquest?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Schwartz?
Yes.
Mr. Pagan?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Zani?
No.
Ms. Organ?
Yes.
Thank you. The fair share plan has been adopted.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Planner, number 2.
Once was going to pass, I wasn't already passed.
Okay. So essentially, the second item of the agenda, I've already mentioned this, is for the planning board to undertake what is known as a consistency review on 3 amendments to the zoning of the Township of Teaneck, all of which are related to implementing the required actions that from the Fair Share Housing Center settlement, and based on the plan that is set forth in the housing element of the Fair Share plan. So it's similar to when you do a master plan amendment or a re-exam on a new master plan, when an ordinance, when the council introduces any change in zoning, when it wants to adopt any change in zoning, there's 3 steps. It has to introduce it at a public meeting. It then sends it to the planning board for what is known as a consistency review. So essentially, it asks the planning board to look at the zoning ordinances and determine whether they're consistent with the adopted master plan. And in this case, since all 3 are related to the housing element and fair share plan, the determination that the board is being asked to make this evening is whether it's consistent with what you've just adopted, which is the new housing element and fair share plan. The board can also, as part of its deliberations, make recommendations for any changes that it feels are necessary. That doesn't help. That doesn't really happen in many situations, and I don't believe that any changes would be necessary this evening. But that is also its function. So that's what the board is doing. The board is required to review these 3 ordinances and determine whether they're consistent with the housing element and fair share plan. It will then report that to the council, and when the council has a public hearing to adopt the ordinances in March, it will indicate on the record whether the planning board has determined them to be consistent or not consistent. And then those ordinances, I hope, will be adopted by the council. So let me just explain what the...
There's 3, you're going to explain each 3.
I'll explain
4, 5, and 6.
each of them.
We vote on each of them.
We'll vote on each after you explain it.
Okay, so the first ordinance, which is under A 4-2019, essentially Teaneck has been adopting regulations relating to how affordable housing gets built, and local regulations as to things like what low and moderate income housing means, the phasing of units, the bedroom mix, rehabilitation, all of the mechanics of how affordable housing gets built. There's also things like when units are made available to low and moderate income families, an affirmative marketing plan has to be adopted, so there are rules about that. if anybody was at the community meeting where Mr. Frank Piazza spoke, he's the affordable housing administrator in the community. And so when units become available, such as in 1475 Palisade or Avalon Bay, he's required to put together an affirmative marketing plan to allow people to advertise and allow people to who are qualified to be put on the waiting list to obtain tenancy. So all of the regulations that are in place are now outdated because they were based on prior code rules, some of which have been invalidated. So the first ordinance essentially is what I refer to as sort of the overarching local affordable housing regulations. And this is very standard. The model for Teaneck has been adopted by many communities throughout the state, but it has to, we have to repeal and replace the old regulations and put the new ones in place. So that's the first one. A lot of technical information. The second ordinance, which
Wait, so do you want to, do you want us to go for each one?
you can
I will
vote.
vote, it's the purpose of this board to vote on each one separately.
Okay.
So with that.
Okay, so, motion to approve. I'll make the motion by Mr. Zomick to approve ordinance number 4 and seconded by Mr.
You're not
Zomick.
approving the record.
Sorry, where,
So let me just indicate that that in my opinion, having been involved in its creation, I believe that this ordinance is consistent with the newly adopted housing element and fair share plan.
so you're looking for a motion for the board to find that ordinance number 4 is consistent with the master plan?
Correct.
Okay, Mr. Zomick, would you amend your motion?
Yeah.
So amended. Mr. Pagan seconded.
Public comment or
No,
no?
we had, public comment, no, okay. So public comment, there will be a hearing on March 26, 2019
Right.
before the council, and there'll be public comment then. Roll call?
Mr. Rose?
Yes.
Captain Conquest?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Ford?
Yes.
Mr. Pagan?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Zomick?
Yes.
Ms. Organ?
Okay, Mr. Price, ordinance 5, 2019.
The second one, I've already described it as part of the fair share housing settlement and as indicated in the housing element and fair share plan. When the Alfred Avenue overlay zone was adopted, there was a 10% set aside requirement, and the Fair Share Housing Center requested in Teaneck and its housing element fair share plan and settlement has agreed to increase that set aside from 10% across the board to 15% for rental projects and 20% for sales. So that's the one change. It's just a small change. And the other change that is being done is when that overlay zone was adopted, there was a permission for 5% of the overall development to be to allow accessory retail to be provided either in a hotel or in a multifamily residential project, and the council indicated that it would like to increase that to 10%, so that's the other change.
But 20%.
No, 10%.
No, 10%. This is the retail.
Retail goes,
The retail.
not condo, sorry, I apologize.
Yeah. So those are the two. So that ordinance is in place. These are just two amendments to that ordinance. And again, it's consistent with the housing element.
Point of clarification. If I remember correctly, when this was discussed, whenever it was discussed a couple of years ago, I think I probably even asked then, even if we approve 20% now, technically a builder could come in to say, my deal is 15%, and we can override that at that point with a variance, right?
No.
No?
As a matter of fact, when the council first voted on this, it was a closed session vote, and it was the first vote on it, and it was approved. My objection then, and I'm going to put my objection on the record now, is we are now obligating our developers to put 15 and 20%, which means if you're building a 50 unit condominium, you need to now have 10, you have to have 10 units, has to be affordable. And I indicated to the council, and I'm indicating to the planning board, and the planning board needs to hear this as well, the Board of Adjustment needs to hear this as well, the requests for variances are going to go up, because penciling out, taking 10 units out of 50 and not being able to make any money on it is going to require you as a developer to simply build more, build higher, build longer, build wider. And same thing with affordable housing. Affordable housing is good, but 15% makes the need for a developer to have to build more and request more variances. Simple math.
The only thing I'll say is that variances can't be granted for that set aside. It's mandatory.
What he's saying is, that we can technically grant a variance to make it 3 floors higher, and therefore we'll be able to make money with it.
I have no comment.
Can you clarify why there's something being proposed that you cannot request for variance for it? I thought that was the whole idea of coming before a board to ask for a variance because you think that the current requirements.
In that aspect, you'd be violating the settlement agreement between Fair Share Housing and
That just being part of the master plan.
It's a requirement of the settlement that any time a community allows a multifamily residential project of more than 5 units, either by variance, by zoning, or by redevelopment plan, that 15% of the units would be set aside if it's a rental project and 20% for sale. I'll give you an example. I was just in Midland Park and requested a variance to increase the density in the overlay zone that they had adopted, and they essentially insisted that 20% set aside, be provided. So there's now they can grant variances on all of the other aspects, but not that one. Otherwise, it would be violating the settlement agreement, and that would.
Correct me if I'm wrong, this would not cause an increase in requests for variances. It may in fact have an impact of curtailing development.
No, Mr. Schwartz's point is that if under the current law on this property, I can build 250, whatever size.
Use 100, it's a nice.
100, whatever size I'm going to build, in order to get in the laws of the town. If you're telling me that's 50 units and 10 of those have to be, I'm going to tell you, you know what? I want a variance to go 2 more floors up. So I'm now building a 7-floor building, so I have more apartments, and now I can give you 12 instead of 10, but I'm putting in 75 apartments instead of 50.
Is that a bad thing in your opinion?
Well, you want to be able to.
I just want the flexibility, that's what I was asking for.
If I'm building 5 floors, now I need to build 6 floors. That's too high. I'm sorry, it's too high. I need to build that extra floor because 20% of my units I'm actually losing money on. And I say losing money, and that's obviously my opinion, because with the parking restrictions, not only do I have to build the apartments at that affordable cost, likely a loss, I have to build parking for them as well, all without a loss, all at a loss. So my question is, and I'm going to take that from yours, is, again, can you remind me, because I'm going to be voting no, I want to be voting no on this. Remind me if I vote no on this, and the planning board votes no on this, whether, if it fails, council gets reported it fails, and they can still vote yes or no.
Yeah, well,
This is an opinion, correct?
essentially, you just voted on the housing element in Fair Share Plan, which basically says you're going to do this. So if you're voting no on this.
So why are we all here tonight then?
Wow.
Why is this a vote if we have to go yes?
Because this is a change in the zoning. All you're being asked to do, whether you agree with it or not, is whether it's consistent with the housing element.
So you're not asking for my
You're
opinion
not
on.
asking for your opinions, you're not
Right.
asking for your
Only
opinions on
consistency.
the ordinance. What you're saying, is this ordinance consistent with our master plan?
Yes.
Not whether I like it, not whether I hate it.
Okay, that's what my
whether the
question is.
council
Voted
should
no
decide.
5 minutes ago.
No, I agree with you overall. This line I don't like.
Or
I
whether
understand.
it's consistent.
I have one more follow-up question. You were going through actual numbers before. 700, 1,000, 200, we gave away this, we gave away that out on Bay, right? Is there a certain number of affordable housing that could exist in Teaneck where you wouldn't have to set aside 20%, or is the rule, if I have 1 billion, affordable houses, if I put up a new building, it's still got to be 20%?
So the point is, under the Fair Share Housing Plan, you've already approved and rezoned projects that are going to provide affordable housing.
Enough to satisfy.
Enough to satisfy. However, there are additional opportunities that are being made through the Alfred Avenue overlay zone and in the Lupa property. So those are the situations where somebody can come forward under the zoning when it's adopted and build those units. Now, that doesn't, if somebody comes in and says, I have a piece of property and I want a variance to build another 100 units, Teaneck is not obligated to approve that. However, if it does approve it, then it is required as part of that.
Even if I were free and clear and covered everybody's definition of what affordable housing was. Anything new I'm gonna build, 20% has to be affordable.
If it's a project, a multifamily project of over 5 units, it's called a mandatory set-aside mechanism.
I guess the loophole is you'd have to come in with 10 5-unit projects,
Different block.
all on one property and one building.
Okay, so if there's any questions, we'll get a motion. I'm sorry, I can't.
Just one last thing.
Yes.
I just want to point out that this is really a twofold situation in my estimation, because it's A, does it fit in with the master plan? And that's the all-important question. But the second consideration to give is that, with it fitting in with the master plan, is it what we think will achieve the objectives that this town would like to see regarding affordable housing in general?
Yeah, but I'm not sure that's what we're being asked to vote on right now.
No, I'm just saying
I think that was what we were being asked to vote on.
It's a factor.
On the other thing. Now we're just being asked to say,
I understand.
does this fall into that book?
Is it consistent with the
And that, what we just voted on is now part of the master plan. So you have to ask yourself, is, does it consistent with what we voted on?
Yes, okay, so if there's any other questions? I'd like, any questions? I'll entertain a motion to the planning board to find that ordinance number 5, 2019 is consistent
I'll second.
with the master plan. Seconded by Mr. Zombie, was there for, I made the motion. Motion by Mr. Began, and then seconded by Mr. Zombie, okay. Roll call?
Mr. Rose?
Yes, and the statement is consistent, yes.
Is it consistent?
Captain Conquest?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Schwartz?
Yes.
Mr. Pagan?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
It is consistent.
Mr. Orchid?
Okay, ordinance passes. Ordinance number 6, which I
Yes,
believe,
2 rows. It is consistent.
sorry, I said,
Okay, even though I voted no on the other thing, it
You
is
voted yes.
consistent with what I voted no.
ordinance number 6, which is Haluba, is just set separate because it's a separate block and lot, and we're looking for the same motion, right?
Correct. This ordinance that's been introduced will allow an overlay zone over the Lupa property, which means the underlying industrial zone will remain in effect. So the owner of that property or developer can do industrial, or if they choose to, they can do an inclusionary affordable housing project to 12 units to the acre. Again, 15% set aside for rental, 20% for sale, and it sets forth the uses that are permitted, which is apartments and townhouses, and it has bulk regulations, and then it has some design requirements as well.
I'm sorry? 818 Teaneck Road Council Chambers. This is 520 Palisades Avenue, which is on the Pagoda border of Palisades Avenue on the west side. Okay.
He's having a tough
Along with
With that being said, I'll entertain a motion that the planning board finds ordinance number 6,
By
2000.
the way, if you do want to turn the council chamber to affordable housing, I would vote yes on that. So.
We're gonna get no mics?
I don't know, by the way, with these, you don't have cable problems, I'm just saying. Motion to take these mics home with you.
Everyone take one home tonight. Okay, I'll entertain a motion that the planning board finds ordinance number 6 of 2019 to be consistent with the master plan.
Second.
Motion. Motion by Mr. Regan, second by Captain Conquest. Roll call, Ross.
Mr. Rose?
Yes.
Captain Conquest?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Schwartz?
Yes.
Mr. Pagan?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Zombie?
Yes.
Ms. Orchid?
Yes.